back to the channel, guys. This video is one I'm pretty excited about. With winter coming and the water temps dropping, our diving's changed a bit, so I got out and did a bit of exploring. I hit up good mate Corey to go and get spoon-fed a bunch of crayfish, and then with some nice conditions we headed out to try a new spot and dove a nice wreck and got some really top quality fish. Before I get into all of that, I figured I'd start it off with a quick dive I did locally, as we had a pretty successful morning, but it didn't quite make up enough footage for its own video, so I might as well tack it on the start of this one. With not much time on our hands, I headed to an area that I've found some really nice trout on before. The viz was a little worse than it has been in recent dives, but it was still plenty good enough, and there was heaps of fish life, so we stuck it out and we found some good fish. On this dive, I landed straight on top of a good sized coral trout. Now this fish didn't like being approached from above and he started to move off, so I just headed straight for the bottom to lay flat and see if I could get him to come back in. He never really bought it and he moved off into the distance, so I decided I'd follow after him and see if I could find where he was headed. Now I never found anything that I thought he might have hung around in, so I breathed up and I headed over to an area where I know the trout like to go once they start to get spooked, into this nice cave. And it was only one dive and I found him right in there, exactly where I thought he'd be.
Found him. Oh, he's a fatty.
After that one, I decided I'd check a few more caves and holes and things to see if I can find any more fish. And I actually found this nice rock that had a couple of good sized coral trout underneath it, so I took one more and then we called it a day. After that dive, we unfortunately ran into some rough weather and the viz in the local area deteriorated. Luckily enough, I'd been in contact with a good mate of mine a couple hours north, and he'd reported back that the viz up there was much better and they were snagging a few crayfish, so I decided to hitch the boat up, make a couple-hour run up there, and we got stuck into them. We started off searching some of Corey's usual cray haunts, which is something I'm definitely not very experienced in. I've caught a few crayfish before, but only a handful, and usually just by coincidence when I'm chasing fish. So Corey gave me the rundown on what we're looking for, and we pretty much just cruised along the top of the reef, hoping to find a set of antennae. After a little while of swimming around, pretending I actually knew what I was doing, Corey called me over and said he'd found one that he might need some backup on, so I made myself useful and I went over to give him a hand.
I go for the front, but very, very likely he's going to snap antenna straight away and come flying up back towards you.
Okay.
So I ended up this side, you ended up
Only just got it, mate. It wasn't long after that one that Corey had found another, although this time he marked it with his gun and he decided he'd give me a go at grabbing it. Yeah, bro.
when you're ready. It's got an actual big one, eh?
Oh, okay. Easy money.
I'll carry that one back, I guess.
Once we threw those few in the boat, we continued our search, and shortly after, Corey found a nice trout in a cave which got pretty stuck once he shot it. And considering I was pretty much just his assistant for the day, I gave him a hand to dig it out. After passing my traineeship, it was time to spread my wings and find a cray for myself. It wasn't looking good with the other lads having nearly filled out our bag limit, but in the dying moments, I managed to find and catch my very own crayfish. I'm not blind! I can see! With our bag limit of crays now in the esky and the weather really turning it on, we decided we'd head out a bit wider, look for some deeper water and try to target a few fish. We came to a new spot I'd never been to in around 20 meters, sounded up with plenty of good show and a nice what looked like a bit of rock. With the water blue, we suited up, jumped straight in, and it turned out it was a nice little wreck and it was loaded with fish. We had a good dive for the arvo and we all managed to snag a really good fish. Right away we were greeted by some really good fish. My very first dive, I saw this school of largemouth nanny guy sitting just off to the side of the wreck. Although with only the 90cm roller and a bit of a poor breathe up, I decided to bail on this dive and try at him again. While I was breathing up again, one of the lads managed to nail a really nice nanny guy. This caused them to hang a little further out and they were being a bit more cautious, but I had a few more dives, waiting patiently next to the wreck, hoping they'd come in nice and close, although they never seemed interested. So I started looking towards some of the other fish that were hanging around. On a few previous dives, I'd seen a nice coral trout head into the wreck each time I got close to the bottom. I didn't want to shoot it in the wreck as it would have been too hard to try and get him out, although this dive he made the mistake of heading out onto the sand and I managed to secure a good shot.
That trouty.
By this stage we had all shot a fish and the lads were pretty much ready to call it a day. With the nannies still on my mind, I decided I wanted one last dive, and lucky enough a pair of them finally folded and decided to come in and check me out. It was by no means a trophy-sized fish, but it was still a first largemouth for me, so I was pretty stoked. With our esky looking pretty good and our legs tired from a big day's diving, we decided to leave it on a high and we headed back to the ramp.